Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. I'm the Gray Strega, and I'm here to give you your daily collective read for today, Monday, February 12th, 2024. What do we have coming through in the cards for today? May I please have the first 5 cards in our 5-card spread? First card we are starting our day off with today is Strength in its reversal. I'm not necessarily surprised to see this card today. We have been working on vulnerability. As I mentioned, we just saw for the energy in separation, this is a moment of deep vulnerability, having to navigate a space or place of releasing something that you would ideally desire not to release, but experiencing a moment of feeling like what you are receiving right now isn't in the form or doesn't feel like it's necessarily ready to move towards that point of union or commitment right now is feeling like a lot of difficult work right now. It is putting someone in a space of feeling somewhat laid bare to a certain degree. This is moving right now as a moment of coming from a place of very little artifice. For feminine energy in separation, this is coming into a point of openness and honesty. This has potentially even been amplifying because, again, this process of release that we see that a lot of the feminine energy is going through right now, it feels like an overwhelming sensation that is almost amplifying that degree or desire of aspiration in terms of divine union. This is not easy work for feminine right now in separation, especially because we saw that feeling of being on the threshold, having to let something go for the hope of it coming back in the way that you would aspire or desire it to. It feels like, again, that wait and see approach of moving into something that you don't know what is on the other side of that is holding on to your manifestation to a certain extent, but allowing that manifestation to guide you. And that feeling of vulnerability is almost one that is helping one come into a sense of truly valuing the importance and recognition of experiencing the desire of what you want versus what you're ready to release right now. So even for the feminine energy right now, this could be a moment of very deep healing and separation. So if you're feeling any of that energy of feeling somewhat like threadbare or raw right now, feminines, bear in mind that this is potentially why. Masculine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. You may also be feeling this moment in separation, especially for the energy that was trying to move from a healing capacity. It is not surprising for us to see this right now because we did identify that there's a good significant portion of masculine energy that may have tried to move towards feminine right now with that point of openness, with that point of clarity, not wanting those walls, not wanting to build a world of illusion around the feminine, just trying to build a true, honest connection with them. And if this led to a space or place of masculine feeling like they were pushed away or rejected, having brought feminine their truth and their openness and clarity, this is a moment that the masculine is simultaneously also potentially feeling very emotionally raw, because this is a moment that is making the masculine question their own choice at this matter in terms of whether or not moving with integrity is something that allows for that positive outcome. This is that moment that we're seeing that moving into authenticity is often characterized in having to do the harder thing. Doing the harder thing, it's not easy, but the benefits are extremely high. But we're seeing that even now for the energy and separation, having to navigate that, having to hold forth, moving with that goal of manifestation and aspiration, it does feel like a moment of weakness, because it may be leading to a moment of internal questioning. So being able to focus right now, if in separation, on your manifestation goals is very important and vital right now. Masculine and feminine energy coming into the divine union frequency. This moment of vulnerability is the expression of those walls coming down between you both right now. And we are seeing that there's something that is happening right now on the energy coming into divine union or moving into divine union, that you are seeing each other potentially in ways that you haven't seen each other before. I want to kind of identify this as potentially feeling to a certain degree like the honeymoon period is over. And that is, again, either going to feel like a blessing right now, or it's going to feel like a moment of deep vulnerability that is potentially occurring right now. Why are we seeing this? Because we saw that for a lot of the feminine energy specifically and masculine, This is a point that feels like the situations outside of the connection itself are requiring a point of observation in how one moves when you're not immediately in immediate physical connection. I have to stress, divine union is not an energy that requires that physical presence around one another at all times, because it is like you are in each other's presence. You are thinking in that modality, even when there are points of separation. So what we are identifying right now is this ability, this amplification right now in how one is moving in points of separation is either leading to a deepening of the energetic connections that are leading this way, because it's almost requiring you to take those walls down to build new pathways of building intimacy, even in moments of physical separation that are, again, building connective tissue, finding where there's a will, there's a way coming through right now that is energetically amplifying the energy that's moving into divine union at this time, versus the energy that's potentially falling back into separation over this, because we're seeing here that there may be some of that more feeling of stop-start here in relation to an energy that feels like it's not necessarily ready to come into the divine union because they're not ready to maintain the consistency or intensity of that connection. For some of the energy right now, this is why we see that this is falling one way or the other. This is either a moment that's going to feel like there's a lot of profound connection that is happening at this time, or it's going to feel like a moment of acceptance and frustration and moving away from something to a certain degree because it's not feeling like something is effectively ready, potentially even being very open and articulate about that right now. But even now we see that for some of the energy that's coming into the divine union frequency, the ability and need to have to verbalize it in a way is almost immediately leading into further separation, because it's almost one of those moments like the minute you have to say that you have that need that's not being fulfilled, like even now there could be something about being able to be open in this way that feels like a bit of a challenge space that is potentially happening here, because this is that moment that almost feels to some of the energy coming into the divine union where it feels like you may be trying to express something that is hard to express, trying to put your finger on something that may be feeling like it is difficult, because again, that ability or that desire to build that point of connectivity, sometimes it feels like it's either there or it's not, and there's something about that being ground tested to a certain degree. Masculine and feminine in the heart of the divine union frequency, this openness, this vulnerability is just leading to, again, as we saw, the deepening of those connections. This is almost feeling like, again, a lot of those walls like coming down to a certain extent, because this is that moment that like it doesn't necessarily matter what the actual tangibles are. It's that feeling of still being in connectivity, even if you're not necessarily in the tangible space with one another. So this is why we're seeing that for the energy right now that's in the divine union frequency, these feel more like hurdles, but the hurdles are actually like clearing space. It's not necessarily feeling like a negative. It just feels like it's amplifying one's own positivity, because it's almost amplifying the ability to stay in connection energetically at a time when it feels like that is something that is difficult to do. Continuing to get clarification right now on these cards, our second card in our 5-card spread right now is we have here our star energy, masculine and feminine in the divine union frequency. This ability right now that is amplifying is this is literally the same card that we started with when we left our readings just a few days ago. So more than anything right now, this is masculine building that point. What is happening right now for masculine and feminine that are potentially in separation? What is happening with these energies right now? Coming into union again, being able to build these points of accessibility and accountability for one another. This is masculine effectively coming towards feminine right now, and effectively are articulating upon the value, the significance, the importance, the ability of seeing feminine in that point of vulnerability right now is being amplified by a masculine energy. And this is masculine energy in the divine union frequency that is learning the lessons of vulnerability. They are learning how to be more vulnerable. How is the masculine energy in the divine union frequency learning the lessons on vulnerability? Observation of the feminine, seeing how the feminine moves at that point of vulnerability, learning, taking notes, allowing that to be, again, a moment of understanding and amplifying in a way. This is masculine energy potentially looking towards feminine in the divine union frequency and feeling that sense of almost like reverence to a certain degree in feminine energy's own ability to be open and vulnerable as a point of strength. So we see here that energetically right now, masculine may be feeling a moment that is a bit more difficult for them, because while for the feminine, coming into this ability of being authentically open and feeling safe to do so is effectively due to the connection with the masculine, the support that the masculine provides, the protective energy. This is amplifying how far that this healing is going towards feminine. This is masculine almost feeling deepening of that vulnerability, because this is masculine that is also learning that ability to be vulnerable through being able to see the feminine flourish and blossom in this way. It's just a harder lesson for the masculine to navigate, because that ability of understanding the emotional balance required in being vulnerable is something that often feels very difficult for the masculine to embody energetically, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Masculine and feminine energy that are coming into divine union right now. This is what we see is a bit of that make or break moment that is potentially happening energetically right now. For some of the masculine energy, this is that moment that you may be feeling like the walls are coming down around a feminine. You may be feeling like that point of like almost feeling like you have to be open with this energy. It's feeling like a little bit like that energy of like a ball rolling down the hill. If you've like hit that tipping point, that movement towards an energy right now, it may feel almost inevitable. But again, it is that moment here that we see that this is almost feeling like a gravitational pull towards a feminine right now, masculine. Specifically because you are recognizing that this is a feminine, that if they're opening up in this way, it is because you've already started to move into the divine union frequency. You've created a place where they feel safe, they feel open, they feel vulnerable to doing so. And you, in a way, are also recognizing and understanding that the way to facilitate that is by also going on that same journey with the feminine. The more that you are able to open up, this is the more that you're seeing that the feminine opens up. This is why we see right now energetically for the masculine, this may be feeling like a very overwhelming or overpowering sensation, because it could be feeling like, again, you're struggling with this feeling of like feeling energetically almost like weak around this feminine. But that's that sense of learning how to be vulnerable, that heart opening exercise that can feel more overwhelming for some of the masculine energy. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. For feminine, seeing masculine moving in this way, this is a moment that, again, the more the masculine's opening up in this way, feminine is appreciating that. Feminine is almost seeing here and understanding how difficult it is for the masculine to open up in that way. But what is happening here for an energy of a feminine seeing a masculine open up in a way that they haven't opened up before? It is building that sense of feminine feeling like there's a true connection that is happening here, because this is potentially feminine feeling like they're realizing and holding the grace or the power of seeing a side of masculine that they know that the masculine does not typically express in their day-to-day incarnation. Masculine and feminine in separation right now, this is effectively what the feminine is trying to identify or clarify to some of the masculine right now. If they're in separation, this is a feminine energy right now that is trying to take that point of vulnerability and move forward with strength from it. This is a feminine energy that is trying to recognize and identify that vulnerability. This is a feminine that's trying to heal to such an extent that they're not trying to let this become a moment of them closing their heart space. This is feminine struggling from a moment right now, because again, this is feminine we saw that is not necessarily moving away from something right now due to wanting to close their heart space. It almost feels like an act of love. This is giving a lot of energy from the feminine of saying, like, if you love something, let it go, hoping that when it comes back, it will be ready to move in the way that the feminine is aspiring and desiring to. And this is even why we see that act of opening here, that act of release, it feels very devastating to the feminine, but this is a feminine that's almost reaffirming to themselves that this is a choice that they're making because it is amplifying in a way their own desire and need to recognize the truth around circumstances and situations and do what they feel in their heart is the best thing to do. Masculine energy that is in separation right now. This is a moment that, again, masculine, this is why we see that these energies are so close to coming into union right now. Some energies are making these new profound connections right now because this is masculine that is, if in separation, trying to mollify to themselves that they were open with the feminine. They were trying to match the same level and degree of openness that they saw from a feminine. This is a masculine that's working through the healing and recognizing that, again, the energy of being open and vulnerable was not a failure point. If anything, this is almost a masculine that's seeing that now that they've been open in that way, you can't close it. You can't close a flower once it opens. This is a masculine that's almost recognizing and understanding that that gift, that act of opening up to a feminine, regardless of whether it meant to union or not, was a gift that the feminine gave the masculine. Because this is something that masculine now realizes is going to lead them towards a feminine that will either appreciate them in their full openness in that way, in them being completely themselves, that deeper understanding of self. Or this is a masculine energy that is now, again, moving towards feminine energy with that openness and recognizing and seeing that matched energy in kind. Third card in our 5-card spread for today is, we have here the 8 of Wands. So this is why this feels potentially so devastating right now, because we've got here vulnerability. We've got here new opportunities of connection, channels that are opening, that are amplifying the difficulty or hurdles around other channels or situations. What we see, what happens when we build an authentic channel with someone, when we build an authentic connection with someone, the other connections effectively almost fade away. It's that moment of identifying and feeling this point of opportunity that may be feeling like it is creating a counterbalance in terms of what isn't working, which is why even now, if there are energies in separation that are moving towards new energetic connections, there could be new fluidity that is opening up here. And it may feel I want to say, it's like the gift that bites back to a certain extent, because the fluidity, the openness of one energy is potentially amplifying the conversation that couldn't be had, the situation that couldn't move forward in that way. It doesn't necessarily take away that point. It almost amplifies it to a certain degree because it's utilizing a point of counterpoint energy here. Seeing what does work doesn't negate what doesn't work. It just further amplifies the limitations and difficulties. We even see here energetically right now, this is either, we are seeing specifically right now for masculine energy and separation, this is either building a new connection point with the feminine energy that you may be feeling you can be very open and expressive with, even around the situations and circumstances that may have led you to connection with this energy. But again, what are we seeing right now around masculine energy that is moving towards feminine in this way of healing? This isn't masculine energy to a certain extent that is taking like a point of misunderstanding or alignment. This is masculine energy that's almost saying to feminine, identifying to feminine why things didn't work out in the past via the accountability, acceptance, taking their own personal accountability, opening up, recognizing their weaknesses, moving into a space of identifying and being able to articulate with feminine their own personal weaknesses is what is potentially now helping to build new connection points with masculine, even in separation. So again, this is masculine energy in separation right now that is coming into a point of healing in separation that will potentially lead back into the divine union frequency. This is what I meant when I told you that so much of this energy is moving back into it so quickly right now. Masculine and feminine energy seeing this right now. This is, again, a feminine energy that if is in separation, there is masculine energy that is potentially either, again, moving towards feminine right now with that ability of being open, taking accountability, to recognize what the limitations were, that is amplifying to feminine an ability to be open. It is fostering a place where the feminine can also take accountability. So what are these energies having right now? The energy that's moving back into divine union, it's going accountability, 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 not blame, 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 blame. Accountability, 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 that is helping to, again, take down those walls. And it feels like it's vulnerable work because it is assessing and understanding one's own part in whatever the blockage may have been. So this is either energy right now coming into a point of healing from separation for feminine, or this is feminine building new energetic connections with masculine, identifying and articulating the fact of potentially, if there's masculine energy that is taking accountability, this is feminine energy identifying and aligning with that energy and almost being able to say to masculine, I know exactly what you mean. I've experienced the same hurdles. Do you see the connection point happening here? Masculine and feminine coming into divine union right now. This is that moment. And even now, it may feel like a bit bittersweet because you may be moving right now into an energetic connection with an energy that is moving in a space of openness, accountability, vulnerability, feminine feeling like there is that safe space where they are becoming more and more comfortable being themselves, because this is a moment that even now for feminine coming into divine union that amplifies the spaces and places where that wasn't necessarily true in the past. So even here we see that the energy right now moving into divine union is moving very swiftly into this, because it's almost that feeling of instantaneous connection that's happening right now. Two energies that feel like they can be open, and it's not necessarily leading to a wall being thrown up. It's almost leading to more openness. Masculine and feminine in the heart of the divine union right now. This is something that we see as just about energetic protection at this point. The energy in the union is working right now to foster and support that energy that they've created amongst themselves in this space or place. And that is effectively, in a certain extent, also addressing, and we see this, a lot of energetic connection right now in relation to what feels like it is serving to foster a point of support here versus what feels like to a certain degree it's not necessarily helpful or fundamental. We even see right now that energetically right now, the energy in the heart of the divine union is helping one another through any of those blockages. These blockages that we're seeing, they're not necessarily in relation or expression to the energy connected in that space. It's more about amplifying what can be better communicated upon to further that sense or that ability of being more open. This is feeling more like those outside inconveniences that we were discussing coming into play. Continuing on, this fourth card in our 5-card spread for today is... we like this because look at this energy here. What is happening for the energy right now of masculine in the divine union frequency? Moving in this way right now is, again, coming into a space of masculine. And I need to amplify. This is potentially masculine becoming very somewhat protective over feminine energy, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Because this is, again, masculine and feminine experiencing in the heart of the divine union frequency, these frustrations, these minor inconveniences, these setbacks, these hurdles. But are they allowing this to effectively hinder the connection between the energy? No, they're amplifying new pathways of connectivity. Masculine, ideas, plans, coordination, communication of passion. Feminine, further vulnerability, further openness. It is looking right now at that moment, potentially feeling that point of having to overcome any difficulties. It does feel more like, again, minor inconveniences that need to be addressed because it's the intentionality of the energy moving towards one another that is the clear channel. The energy coming into divine union right now, you may be feeling like this. You may be feeling right now, again, there may be a point of talking right now through circumstances or situations that may be causing inconveniences. But this is that moment that is amplifying that energetically, when you have that point of deep connection with someone, the energetic inconveniences, it's like anything big just becomes an inconvenience. It becomes something that you want to step over or climb over because of what's on the other side. And this is why we see, to a certain extent, energetically, even now, there's some energy falling into separation that's basically saying, yeah, I can't come into connection with this person because this person has too many inconveniences around them. There's something about this right now where the inconveniences are effectively ground testing the energy that's truly moving into divine union or connection, versus someone who's always potentially saying that they got a reason or an excuse. There's something that's potentially holding them back or preventing them from connection. Like that ability right now of having the connection beyond the inconveniences is what is effectively amplifying what feels like it's truly moving into divine union, versus something that feels more like stop start. And it may be starting to feel like, for some of the energy right now, this is potentially stuttering back out into separation, because for the feminine, seeing a masculine that's potentially putting situational circumstances between them and connection, this is feminine that's almost recognizing an energy that only wants to come towards feminine from a passion center and isn't invested in building a channel of communication with feminine in the spaces and places in between. This is feminine energy amplifying and trying to potentially, again, not even potentially even say this to a certain masculine energy. But if they're not necessarily, if they're allowing that point of discommunication in the spaces and places in between, this is a feminine that's potentially feeling that this is masculine that's only coming towards them to fulfill their passion center, which is why, in a way, this is feminine, like more potentially, again, if this is energy in separation, this is feminine energy that's saying, like, no, you can't come towards me if the only reason you're coming towards me is to fulfill the passion center. This is a feminine saying to a masculine that does not create a space or place of feminine feeling inclined to be open and vulnerable. Masculine, if in separation, this is again a moment of, again, assessing and understanding the difference between being open and vulnerable with the feminine versus what feels like it is reciprocal. Because we did see here right now that if this is a feminine energy that is potentially reaching out to masculine after masculine was trying to be open with the feminine, this could be masculine basically saying to feminine, to a certain extent, you don't necessarily want to build a true connection with me. You're only effectively wanting to build an amplification of wanting me from a certain facet. So even now in separation, there is a lot of clarity that's happening right now in building new channels of communication. But those channels of communication are being amplified by almost amplifying what you're not in the mood for, what you're not entertaining, what you're not welcoming. And we see here that for masculine and feminine, to a certain extent, this is almost like a way of like trying to like close down the static, if you will, that is potentially preventing that deeper, truer connection. Continuing to get clarity on these cards right now. The fifth card in our 5-card spread. 2 cards coming out for our 5 card. We have here our 9 of Swords in combination with our Page of Cups in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy right now in the divine union frequency. This is that moment of, again, this is potentially coming through to a certain extent right now of masculine just feeling some sense of frustration in relation to circumstances that may be hindering them from coming into divine union with feminine right now. This is masculine that's almost like looking for a state of easement. This is masculine that feels like, to a certain extent, that they've had to be moving very much right now in the realm of a lot of like having to do things and not necessarily feeling like there's been any space or place for them to come into a point of enjoyment. So even now for the masculine energy in the divine union frequency, as I mentioned, this is coming through more from an amplification of frustration, if you will. A lot of the masculine energy right now may be feeling that point of frustration in terms of not having the ability to come into a state or space of enjoyment. So we even see now for the feminine, this could be feeling like having to help the masculine through this to a certain extent, because this is something that is a little bit easier for the feminine energy right now, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Because again, I want to describe this to a certain extent of, again, a masculine energy. I want to say it feels like it's the full weight of responsibility, not allowing for that point of easement. And even now, we see here that one of the things that feminine could do right now to help masculine in this modality right now is almost reminding masculine that it is okay for the masculine energy to take a little time for themselves, to take a little break, because this is almost a masculine energy we see right now that is almost operating in such a massive, like I'm seeing here, it's like it's trying to overcome those hurdles to such an extent that it's almost overwhelming the masculine in this modality, and it's creating a point of frustration in the sense that they feel like there's not very much room to play or to come into a space of enjoyment. So some inner child wounds potentially coming through right now for the masculine. Feminine right now, this is a little bit easier for the energy in the divine union, because we see here that for the feminine, being able to move in this space and place right now is almost creating an opportunity of, again, making sure that there's a point of trying to make sure that this is masculine that isn't feeling the brunt of too much responsibility right now. Masculine and feminine energy coming into this, and I have to say here, there may be a lot of conversations, difficult conversations that may be occurring right now in these spaces and places, because we see here that these are hurdles. These are practical hurdles that are potentially obstructing even the connection right now in the divine union frequency. So moving into a space or place of productivity is going to be kind of the name of the game right now. Masculine and feminine coming into the divine union frequency. One of the things that we are identifying here is the fact that we are seeing specifically that this is a moment that is either leading to a deepening energetic connection, energy moving very quickly into the heart of the divine union frequency here. Because again, this is feeling in a way like any of these setbacks or hurdles are just minor inconveniences. Feminine seeing this to a certain capacity, I have to stress, is almost like a little breathtaking for the feminine to observe, because this is potentially feeling like a feminine that's seeing the full breadth of what it means when like a masculine like truly desires the feminine, how far they'll go and how far they'll see in terms of observing that there isn't anything that feels like it's like not a big deal, not a big deal. And feminine being like, it's a big deal. Masculine being like, it's not a big deal. Feminine recognizing this right now, coming into the divine union frequency, is going to feel a little bit overwhelmed. Why is the feminine energy going to feel overwhelmed this way? Because it's amplifying any of the spaces and places in the past where energy wasn't willing to navigate through those hurdles. This is effectively feminine in a moment right now of coming into divine union, in feeling this like overwhelming sense of understanding to a certain extent in terms of seeing the difference of a masculine that truly has their heart intended towards the feminine, and not necessarily seeing anything as being too great a burden to help facilitate that, versus feminine feeling the energy around them that potentially like saw like the smallest inconvenience as like a total deal breaker in being able to navigate connection points. This could even be feminine energy right now moving into new energetic connections with masculine in terms of seeing the difference energetically of the energy that's truly like willing to overcome these things, because it's like a masculine that's building the energetic connection with the feminine. It's like, it doesn't feel like these are hurdles. It just feels like something that the masculine needs to step over. And feminine seeing that in a way, it is almost unlocking right now a moment of deepened trauma, because this is, again, what are we seeing right now? This is feminine energy, and this is where we see that blending that's happening of the energy and separation, that's feeling the difference potentially between what one energy will do with the same hurdles versus what another energy will do. While one energy for the feminine may say, no, that's a bridge too far. That's too much work. I can't possibly. It's too difficult. Another masculine energy saying, what's too difficult? Like what? Like literally just stepping over something that someone else was like pointing at and saying like, this is too much. This is too much. This is too much. The other person like almost like looking over it being like, what? Like what? So we see that even now for some of the feminine energy moving towards new energetic connections, if in separation, this is again seeing the amplification between the energy that sees like, no, nothing is too great a hurdle, versus the energy that's like Prince, like, oh, I can't because it's too much. It's too difficult. Masculine in separation right now, or moving into, well, let's start here. The masculine energy coming into divine union right now, that's again that moment that may be amplified right now. If you're coming into divine union of you effectively moving towards feminine, and feminine almost saying like, no, there's too many difficulties, and you almost looking at the feminine and being like, who told you those were difficulties? Who told you those were difficulties? These are not difficulties. This is almost masculine to a certain extent of coming into divine union with feminine. Like building even that clarification point in feminine, masculine, being like, who told you that that was difficult? It is almost building a deepening connection, because what is the energy right now that's coming into divine union talking about? They're open. They're talking about spaces and places in the past where feminine had to deal with energy that was potentially making the feminine feel like what they were asking from the masculine was a bridge too far. The healing is already coming into play for the energy coming into the divine union frequency. And this is why we even see now that this is almost amplifying a masculine that's getting very protective over feminine, because this is a masculine that feels like they're getting information, they're seeing things about the feminine that almost feels like, again, it's almost like the energetic feeling of finding like a diamond in the rough and being like, where have you been? Who told you these things? These are energies that are finding each other and being like, are you kidding right now? Because you're on the same energetic journey of healing. Masculine energy and separation right now, we see that this is potentially happening right now as you're building that connection point with the feminine. And this is, again, either masculine that is coming back towards the feminine and saying, I see it now. I recognize I've healed from the past. But more, this is the majority of new energy coming into new connections with feminine and seeing and amplifying a point of understanding between what the feminine is used to versus what you can deliver. Because this is a masculine that is moving towards feminine right now in separation with a place of openness. So this openness that we see that the masculine is coming to the feminine with, this is either masculine that's making new energetic connections with feminine and saying, who told you that was too difficult? I'm here to be open with you. Oh, and masculine almost saying, oh, that person wasn't willing to be open with you. That person was trying to utilize those small setbacks as reasons, versus masculine or masculine in separation that's now moving towards feminine saying, I see how I was in the past. I'm ready. But this is going to be distant energy. This is going to be distant energy. This is not the type of energy that shifts too much. This is energy that may be coming back to feminine right now and saying, I've changed a lot. And so being able to identify that right now is a masculine that's almost amplifying to feminine what has been happening in the intervening time here that has led the masculine to a better understanding of self. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Strength card in its reversal in combination with our Star card. One card to clarify, please. Beautiful. What did I say? The energy right now in the divine union frequency, or coming into the divine union frequency, what hurdle? What hurdle? These are minor setbacks. These are minor stumbling blocks. This is feeling the frustration of something that doesn't feel ideal, but it feels like something that is able to be navigated because you share that long-term goal. You share that long-term aspiration. You are each other's destination. So this is that moment that feels like the weight and the inability right now of the energy in the divine union frequency is effectively amplified more in feeling the frustration of things that block the connection as momentary setbacks, preventing you from being able to stay in that space that you would ideally aspire to stay in right now. So even energetically right now, a lot of this work that we see that is occurring for the energy in the divine union frequency is almost trying to bring this energy more into light, moving through, navigating with each other, trying to overcome the hurdles, trying to find easier ways, pathways around what some of these frustrations and setbacks are, to make it so that this point isn't something that feels like it's so far in the distance, so much as something that you are embodying in the present. So that ability right now to bring the present, the future aspiration into the present is almost being escalated right now by identifying and articulating on what is the limitations there. Masculine and feminine coming into the divine union frequency, this is that same ability, and it's feeling a little bit like a point of breakthrough, because it's going to feel like, in a way, that sensation of having found what you're effectively looking for energetically. We see here that there's a connection point. What did I tell you is going to potentially happen right now? A feminine energy that is desiring openness, that is desiring clarity, that is moving towards masculine with that level or degree of openness. Feminine feeling validation to do so by experiencing from masculine, a masculine that is simultaneously also doing that hard work, showing feminine that they are in touch with their vulnerable side, that they don't see that vulnerability as a weakness. It's a muscle that they've been working on. It's teaching themselves to come into softness. And feminine recognizing a masculine that is able to come into vulnerability by the means of understanding the self, recognition of one's own limitations, taking accountability for what might not necessarily have worked in the past. This is all building the connective tissue right now for the energy that is moving into divine union. And it may feel like, again, it's like this opening that continues to open, because it's like the more that you open, it doesn't feel like it creates a space of rejection. It's almost coming into a place of saying, I accept you for that. I accept you for that. I accept you for that. I'm not perfect. I accept you in your imperfection. Your imperfection is something that I can accept. And in through that moment of being vulnerable, expressing to each other your weaknesses, this is almost like, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for showing me that side of yourself that I know is so difficult to show. That ability is amplifying and moving energy very deep into the heart of the divine union frequency, because what is happening? Difficult situations that are requiring a point of vulnerability, and the energy in the divine union, that is that moment that is securing and stabilizing the energy, because this is an energy that's saying, you're not just coming towards me from desire, you're coming towards me from a point of relying. We are relying on each other. We are relying on each other, and that is creating a space that we both inhabit. Masculine and feminine in separation. This moment or opportunity that's effectively happening right now, this is feminine energy coming into a point of healing, even in separation, because this is feminine energy that is focusing right now and not letting their heart close up right now. This is feminine almost accepting and coming into a point of release. What is feminine saying to masculine right now that they're trying to effectively heal with? Even if in the process of release, this is why for the feminine, this feels like feminine finding themselves, because this is feminine energy that's not effectively pushing masculine away. This is feminine energy saying, you can't come towards me just out of your own desire. Consistency is key. This isn't a moment that I'm looking for you to just come here to meet me from a point of desire. And if that's all you can bring, then we need to come into terms with that, because this is feminine sentiment that I'm looking for you to just come here to meet me from a point of desire. And if that's all you can bring, then we need to come into terms with that, because this is feminine versus the energy of the feminine saying, when you're ready to be consistent, when you're ready to be open, when you're ready to be vulnerable, this is feminine saying, the door is always open. So long as you come towards me from that space. This is why for the feminine energy right now, this is how the feminine energy is moving forward without effectively releasing. Because this is feminine energy that is effectively saying to masculine, I am not pushing you away. I am asking you to meet me where I tell you I am going to be. When you're ready to meet me here, you know where to find me. Masculine, if you are in separation with feminine, what we effectively see at this time is a moment of, again, recognizing and also going through a process that if you were vulnerable with a feminine energy, if you were open towards a feminine energy, and that feminine energy pushed you away, you are doing the same work right now. You may even be expressing this to new feminine energetic connections, which says, I tried to be open to this person in this way. I've moved from a state of integrity. And this is almost, again, masculine energy saying to feminine, if you are ready to meet, again, masculine energy saying to feminine, if you are ready to meet me there, the door is open. The door is open because I just want to be able to have the same vulnerability that you yourself aspire and require to be. So this energetic frequency right now is why we see that there's so much energy right now that may potentially be coming into divine union right now, because these energies are both on the same healing path and they're set to encounter one another because they're walking on the same road. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our star card in combination with our 8 of Wands in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Queen of Pentacles in its reversal. Masculine and feminine energy in union. What are we seeing that's effectively happening right now? We are effectively seeing right now for feminine, this is feminine energy coming into a state of openness around their own instability. And this may feel like a little bit of a difficult nut to crack right now, with a lot of the feminine energy, because this is potentially feeling, again, the sense or the need of the masculine being there for you right now, identifying and recognizing that there is masculine energy that is looking to be able to facilitate and help you to a certain extent. But this is also feminine energy that's working through their own process here of saying effectively, I want to do it myself. I want to do it myself. This is feminine energy that is feeling that desire of wanting to stand on their own 2 feet, wanting to come into their own sense of stability. And this is why, to a certain extent, this is almost potentially going to feel like, for a lot of the energy in the divine union frequency, masculine may be feeling that frustration of potentially wanting to help a feminine, but feeling the sense that the feminine almost like is like effectively pushing the masculine back to a certain degree, even in the divine union frequency, because this is a feminine energy saying, no, you don't understand. This is not this is a moment of feeling the amplification of support, of masculine. But in a way, this is helping the feminine come into their own strength and their own stability and their own security, because this is feminine energy in the divine union frequency, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, that is feeling the full weight and support of recognizing the power of a masculine that is coming through as that voice of support, versus the feminine wanting to create that sense of stability within the self. Because this is a feminine energy that, again, potentially rose into this frequency by building that supportive network within the self here. This is a feminine energy that is potentially working right now on maintaining that integrity of the self without feeling the anxiety of leaning too much on the masculine for support during inconveniences right now. So even now, there could be a moment that is being amplified about a feminine energy pushing back a little bit about even in the divine union frequency, because this is feminine energy that is trying to make sure that they're coming into their own power right now through navigating their own feelings of instability. Masculine, you may be seeing a feminine energy in this modality in the divine union, and this is potentially what you appreciate and aspire for with this feminine energy, because this is a feminine energy that, again, when they come into a state of overwhelm, they don't necessarily move into a space of leaning on others for support in that way. This is almost feminine energy that you recognize and amplify is very much focused on their work of the self. And even now, this is masculine. The difficulty we're seeing here with the masculine energy in this way is recognizing and identifying the fact that we see here that for a lot of the masculine in this modality, it is that sense of wanting to help and support a feminine that's almost holding you back to a certain extent, because you recognize and identify, you understand that this feminine energy doesn't like to lean on others at a point that they need that support. So this is almost coming through right now as a point of easement that may need to be navigated right now in terms of how the feminine energy can more effectively articulate to masculine. Bearing in mind, this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. How masculine can be supportive at a time that masculine sees that feminine is in need of that without necessarily stepping on the feminine's toes. Continuing to get clarification on this, for the energy coming into the divine union frequency right now, what we're effectively seeing and identifying is a moment that we are recognizing that energetically masculine and feminine right now, this is that moment that the energy coming into divine union is effectively getting ground tested to a certain extent. Because what we're effectively identifying at this time is a moment where we are seeing that feminine is experiencing potentially energetically a moment of feeling like they're coming into divine union with masculine. And even now, that ability right now to find pathways to have that connection point, for the energy coming into divine union, in a way, it is feeling like there is trauma work that is happening here. This is feminine unpacking things to a certain extent, even as they're coming into divine union, because this is the same expression that we're seeing of the energy in the divine union frequency. This is feminine energy that is almost, again, working very hard right now to facilitate a connection wherein the masculine identifies and recognizes that this is feminine energy that works very hard to support their own self, to understand their own limitations and setbacks, to build their own sense of stability. So we are seeing and recognizing right now, for a lot of the energy coming into the divine union frequency, even now, that ability of feminine to articulate and amplify experiences from the past wherein they weren't necessarily able to build that connection point, it is basically building a bridge with the connection of the energy coming into divine union, because this is masculine almost being able to see and recognize and say to feminine, I know exactly what you mean. This is that counterpoint. And again, it feels like the amplification. For feminine, this is experiencing, even as you're moving into divine union, all of the places where you weren't able to have this possibly happen. It's almost creating like a lesson. It's like the deepening of the lesson from the past, because your openness is almost amplifying what was not necessarily working in the past that may have caused you to come into this space. Masculine, you are potentially seeing in the connection with feminine, if you're coming into divine union right now, that the openness and ability of feminine here is amplifying, again, a connection point with past experiences that you may have potentially desired to build with in this way, but you're recognizing we're almost an impossibility matrix in relation to what you could create from a point of openness. So we're even seeing now the energy coming into divine union. How are you building that connection tissue? You're building it by opening up, by talking about the difficulties from the past. This is why we see that vulnerability is present, because this is that further articulation. This isn't necessarily hiding things from one another. It's expressing more and more, building that connection point, even in identifying what didn't work in the past. Masculine and feminine right now in separation. What we are effectively seeing and recognizing right now for the energy in separation, and this is why we see that for so much of the feminine energy right now, this process of release potentially feels so difficult, this is feminine energy that is coming into a point of acceptance in what is not creating stability in their own life right now. This is feminine energy effectively in separation, identifying and understanding what is and is not in their control. And this is potentially a feminine energy that even in separation right now may be feeling the full weight of acceptance on something that they may have tried or facilitated doing everything that they possibly could to fix. But they aren't necessarily seeing any other options or possibilities beyond this release process. This is why we identify right now, this is a healing journey for feminine, because this is almost feminine energy saying that this is feeling like a feminine energy that may have potentially reached what feels like almost like a breaking point energetically on something, in terms of identifying something that they feel like they've done everything they can do to bring stability to something, recognizing that if they can't bring stability to it, that's because it's not due to the instability of the feminine energy. It's due to the feminine recognizing that there's something outside or beyond their control. This could even be feminine energy right now, articulating this to other feminine energy or new connections with masculine that are almost amplifying to the feminine and helping them unpack it and say, everything that you're saying to me shows to me that you are trying to move from a place of inauthenticity, but that authenticity or that openness was effectively the limitation or hurdle, because that wasn't coming back with that reciprocal energy and kind. This is why we see that so much of this feminine energy right now feels that sense of vulnerability as they go forward, but almost coming into a point of acceptance in the process. Now, Masculine energy in separation right now, we see that you're almost matching the feminine in this modality right now, because what we're effectively identifying at this time is a point of recognition in relation to situations and circumstances where you yourself also feel like you have done everything that you can do. There could be a moment right now that you feel like you've expressed something, and you could even be feeling to a moment we see for some of the masculine energy unpacking something and saying, I may have said too much. I may have told them too much. I may have opened up to them too much. But what is the masculine experiencing right now energetically from supportive feminine energy? This is energy saying, again, for the right energetic connection, there's never going to be that moment that feels like a bridge too far, because that's more of a moment of finding energy that is in proper alignment. That when you're not energetically connected to the right energy, it's always going to seem like an inviolability point to someone else who might welcome that level or degree of openness. So we see even now, like, this process in separation is effectively leading to what looks to be new energetic connections of energy that feels like they're getting each other, that they're on the same wavelength because you're on the same frequency. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Eight of Wands in its reversal in combination with our Knight of Wands. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Five of Pentacles. Now, this is why we see right now, this could be a very emotionally difficult time for a lot of energy, specifically the energy that is potentially in separation right now. Why? Because we effectively see to a certain extent that a lot of this energy right now is being triggered by abandonment wounds to potentially return back to situations or circumstances that don't feel like they were necessarily in alignment with them. This is energy that's almost pushing through their own fears of abandonment for the sake of what is on the other side. So energetically, we even see and recognize right now that for a lot of the energy in separation, this may be feeling like a very difficult time. Feminine may even be feeling right now in separation that there may be an energy of masculine that's trying to come back towards them. But again, this is that difference between a feminine energy that feels the weight of a masculine that's ready to come into a point of emotional availability or openness, is able to build forward, versus a masculine that may be moving towards them specifically and only from the point of their own passion center. And this is what we see right now is so difficult for the feminine energy, because this is almost feminine energy is saying to them, like, you're trying to come into the wrong door. You got to go around the side, because this is feminine energy saying to a certain extent that this is feminine energy that says, I'm not looking for someone that's trying to come towards me from a passion center. I'm looking for openness. I'm looking for emotional availability. I'm looking for vulnerability. And this is feminine energy, again, moving forward in separation and trying to amplify the masculine, that the desire that they feel towards a masculine is not the hurdle. That this isn't a situation about a lack of desire, but more about wanting to build into a space or place where they don't necessarily feel abandoned all the time. Because the problem with desire is that desire comes, ebbs and flows. Desire is not consistent. It goes like this. And this is why we see for feminine right now, this is almost feminine trying to articulate to a masculine. If a masculine is not building the emotional consistency in between, that feminine is not in the mood for an energy that goes like this, because it's constantly leading feminine to feeling like they are at a point of perpetual abandonment, even at moments of heightened passion. Masculine, if in separation, this is a moment that you may potentially be trying to articulate to a feminine, because if this is a situation or circumstance where you feel like your openness to a feminine led to the feminine rejecting you, this is a moment that you may be feeling to the feminine and trying to say to feminine, you only want me for the passion space. You only want the positives. You don't necessarily want the full breadth of what I have to offer or what I have to express. And this is masculine also trying to go through that internal hurdle of having feeling like they were moving in a state or space of an energy that said that they desired one thing, but what they received, they showed that they weren't truly ready for. Both of these energies, as I amplified, are moving right now, potentially in separation, which means, again, potentially on the threshold of coming into new energetic connections. And what are the energies coming into the divine union frequency doing right now? They are unpacking The spaces or places that they felt like they did everything that they could do, or they felt like they were abandoned. Both of these energies right now almost amplifying, working through the abandonment wound with each other, amplifying the fact that they are on the same healing journey. Because this is, again, not energy that is moving into a space of assuming that they just came out of a box. This is energy that is unpacking the fact that there's something about them trying to come into alignment, and being able to articulate on those points that did not successfully allow that is coming into a point of catharsis through accountability, through sharing with each other the lessons that brought you both towards one another. And for feminine, seeing a masculine energy that is, and again, finding this moment with each other. And this is why we see so much energy right now coming into divine union. It feels like you've come upon a treasure chest. Why? Because feminine, masculine, this is masculine energy seeing a feminine that's almost articulating to them a story about trying to be open in that degree, and not necessarily having it reach that point of success, leading to the feminine being pushed away. Masculine articulating to feminine that they were on a journey of finding the self, that they finally came into a point of openness and it led to a point of rejection. And here these two energies are coming into divine union. But it is also a moment that feels bittersweet, because this is a moment that it doesn't just feel like something that is opening and blossoming. It is sharing in the healing. It is sharing in the process of release. It is sharing in the cost that was occurred that led you to find one another, sharing each other's journey by sharing each other's hardships. Masculine and feminine in the divine union frequency, you do this for each other all the time. This is the work that you do, and it requires constant unpacking. It requires constant work. And what do we see here that is effectively happening right now that is so difficult for the energy in the divine union frequency? Feminine is almost amplifying right now in the divine union frequency, saying, I don't want to give you too much of my burdens. This is feminine almost saying to masculine, it's not your responsibility to take my burdens on your back. I can do these things myself. This is feminine almost amplifying again. This is masculine trying to amplify to feminine, and again, acting as clear mirrors to each other, because why are these energies in connection? I just showed you, because they share each other's journey. They know what's brought them to this point. This understanding of one another is helping one see the things that need to be healed. This is masculine almost saying to feminine, I know you can do it yourself. I know the experiences that led you to believe that you have to take these burdens on yourself. This is masculine almost saying to feminine, I want to help you heal by showing you that you don't have to. But we also see that this is masculine that's basically at the same time recognizing that they don't want to take these things away from the feminine. This is masculine saying, I want you to know that all you need to do is ask for me to show you that I will be there. So energetically right now, we see that both of these energies are effectively helping each other and facilitating healing. Because this is a feminine energy that says, I know I don't want to lean on you. I want to navigate these things for myself, because that's what I work through in terms of feminine building their own sense of stability for themselves internally, however they hold that stability point. And this is masculine that is moving through a similar abandonment wound right now, because what we are identifying here is this is masculine energy that's almost saying to feminine, I want to help you in this way. I want to help you in this capacity. I recognize your own ability to navigate these things, but I want to show you that I want to be there to help you as much as I can. And this is masculine potentially feeling frustration right now around situations and circumstances that they feel are triggering the masculine and making it more difficult to be able to facilitate helping the feminine in the way that they would aspire to. Because this is almost masculine energy saying to a certain extent to feminine, it's not your job to have to handle the practicalities. I should be there to help you too. Masculine and feminine coming into divine union right now, this is the amplification point of the energy that is really pronouncing and showing the difference between what divine union feels like versus what is being released. And for feminine right now, it may feel a little bit frustrating, because for the feminine right now, the abandonment wound is potentially being opened by experiencing masculine energy that is moving in a way that they want to come into the assistance of the feminine. This is almost a feminine energy that, like, if there's anything here that's feeling like problematic, this is masculine saying, like, that's not a big hurdle. That's something that's nothing. This is nothing. These are all very small. But having a masculine energy that's taking something that led to the feminine potentially being abandoned, feminine experiencing a situation that someone potentially over-exaggerated the hurdle, over-exaggerated the difficulty, is almost amplifying to feminine the abandonment wound that they're currently working through, because this is a masculine that's almost showing them the profound level of easement that can happen when someone is truly invested in building with the feminine. Masculine, you may be recognizing and identifying this work as well right now, which is why we see even now this is almost a moment that feels triggering to masculine if coming into divine union right now, which is why we see that you may be feeling very protective of feminine energy, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to. Masculine and feminine in separation right now. This is effectively why we see so much energy in separation right now. And even now, it is that moment that we see that the energy around someone or circumstances or situation is feeling like the separation is almost not necessarily easing something. It's almost amplifying the hurdles that were potentially leading to divine union. Because even now, this is potentially feminine energy in separation, articulating to masculine energy what was effectively preventing stability to come into a place. And this is masculine almost effectively affirming to feminine and saying, those are not hurdles. These are not issues. These are not difficult situations. These are energies or someone was utilizing potentially as excuses or reasons why they weren't necessarily able to fully invest and commit. This is why we see even now feminine energy in separation. This isn't potentially leading to a circumstance or situation of feminine running back to a circumstance with masculine, even if they feel a lot of passion towards them, because it's almost the energy around the feminine is amplifying and reaffirming to the feminine that, again, it's a situation where the passion center was present, but it was requiring an overabundance of feminine having to do the heavy lifting to be able to maintain the stability in a relationship. Masculine, if in separation right now, this is potentially masculine, if in separation, going through a moment that is, again, questioning how open or expressive you were to feminine, feeling that sense of whether it would have been better not to necessarily open up in this way because it led to potentially an abandonment wound opening. But we see here, in a way, it's not doing that work, because an energy of masculine right now that's opened up in that degree, it's almost amplifying and securing, again, through masculine talking to other energy, that coming from a state of openness and integrity should never necessarily be frowned upon. It'll be welcomed by the right energy. So we see even now, both of these energies right now are moving into a state of healing, even if in separation. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Knight of Wands, our Page of Cups in its reversal, and our Nine of Swords. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Ace of Wands in its reversal. This is a beautiful card to see in this way, because this is showing a level or degree of practicality that's coming into situations and circumstances. If in separation, this is masculine energy. Look at this energy of masculine in separation right now. This is masculine energy in separation that is potentially feeling some kind of wound that's opened up in terms of trying to move towards feminine with a point of authenticity, with a point of clarity. This is potentially even masculine energy that's feeling some kind of sense of loss, because moving out of a sense of play, moving out of trying to come out of something in terms of being in a mode of being in a point of just something that is easy or fun, breaking things down, giving the hard work to the feminine, may have felt like it led to a crash point. It may have led to effectively the masculine being in a point of separation. But this is immediately a masculine energy that is moving into a point of recovery to a certain extent, even now, because this is a masculine energy that is almost getting the affirmation, potentially even from other masculine energy in this modality, that is amplifying that this was doing the right thing. And that is almost that moment of recognizing that when you're on a healing journey, doing the right thing doesn't necessarily mean that it is the easy thing, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that it was the wrong thing. This is in fact the masculine working right now, if in separation, in the recognition that being able to bear that weight, being able to be vulnerable, it always comes with that anxiety, that fear, that uncertainty of what it will effectively result in. But it is also the only way to be able to move forward and manifest the thing that you aspire and desire with feminine. So this is, again, that moment with masculine energy right now, potentially if in separation, questioning your own self, questioning your own space, questioning your own place, but feeling that amplification and recognizing that sense of coming into understanding with oneself, knowing what it is that you're potentially trying to build forth on right now, and letting this serve as a lesson in terms of being able to move forward with that openly moving forward. Because we even see that for some of the masculine energy in this modality of separation right now, one of the reasons that this effectively occurred was potentially not the fact that you weren't necessarily open, but that someone felt that you brought that openness in too late to a circumstance or situation. Your ability to be vulnerable, your ability to speak your truth, your ability to speak from the heart space. Some of this is feeling less like a point of rejection due to acceptance and more to someone feeling like they were effectively misled due to not necessarily being able to do so in the onset, which is why we see even now for some of the masculine energy in separation from this degree or from this capacity, this feels like a path opening exercise, because this is that moment of recognizing and understanding oneself enough right now that feels like it's giving you that conviction to be able to go forward with a level or degree of authenticity and clarity. Feminine energy, this is that moment or modality where if you're in separation, you are looking towards a masculine to bring a level or degree of seriousness to circumstances or situations right now. What is so difficult for some of the feminine energy right now is the fact that some of this masculine energy that's potentially moving towards you, so difficult for some of the feminine energy right now is the fact that some of this masculine energy that's potentially moving towards you need to move in union. Continuing to get clarification on this, the energy coming into divine union right now, that amplification point, that recognition point, it feels bittersweet, because even now for a feminine, if this is feminine energy that's moving into divine union with masculine, it is creating a space of feeling the weight or recognition of places and spaces in the past where you may have aspired someone to meet you in this way, but they weren't necessarily ready to meet the challenge. So even now, that unpacking of those situations and circumstances from the past. What's beautiful about this for feminine and masculine that are coming into divine union is this is not necessarily having to hide that truth from one another. It's being open with one another, expressing those experiences and situations wherein you may have aspired to move into divine union with someone, but they weren't necessarily ready. That is facilitating a point that feels like, again, you are helping each other heal. You are building those bridges through your vulnerability with each other. Masculine, feeling that weight and that ability of seeing a feminine and almost amplifying that is helping you also, because this is potentially a moment that you are even amplifying your own points of weakness, your own points of frustration, potentially even talking about your own experiences in the past where, again, you recognize what that feminine energy has experienced, either through having gone through it yourself when you are not necessarily as healed, or having to had a moment or expression of time wherein you wish that you'd met this feminine energy sooner, because it would have saved you a lot of the pain that you felt that you had to come into in terms of building a point of artifice, feeling like you had to kind of move in a way of trying to please the feminine, as opposed to just being able to build that open emotional circuit with the feminine. Masculine and feminine energy in the divine union frequency right now, this is a moment that we're almost seeing that is amplifying the masculine energy's frustration right now in terms of not necessarily feeling like there is time or space of easement. This is a masculine energy right now that may be feeling the full weight and breadth of all of the things that they need to push forward with right now. And it could be even feeling and experiencing a sense of overwhelm right now for some of the masculine energy moving in this way. Because this could almost be feeling right now, masculine, like there's something here that is requiring you to have to move again with so much vigor, with so much passion, that it doesn't even allow for a state or space of enjoyment. It's not allowing you, even like I'm seeing here, the fulfillment of the passion center, it doesn't feel like it's allowing for a state of easement right now, because there's just simply too much to do. Because again, there's a lot of hurdles here that need to be unblocked. This is a lot of like tangible work that needs to be done here. So masculine may be going through a moment that feels like a little bit of like overwhelmed to a certain degree, that's not allowing a point of like them being able to do what they really desire to do in relation to easement. Feminine, you may be seeing this on the part of some of the masculine energy around you right now, in terms of the masculine feeling like they have a lot of this work that they need to do right now that's making it hard for them to be able to come into a state of easement. And you yourself, to a certain degree, are also experiencing that, but this is also amplifying the fact that feminine doesn't want to put additional weight on a masculine that is going through these difficulties on their own selves. So what we're seeing right now for the energy right now in the divine union is this, again, sharing in the frustration or the work that you're trying to do right now is being amplified, but it's that sense of not wanting to add to one another's burden that is effectively making some of the difficulties here. Because again, both energies right now are thinking so carefully about the other that it's hard to ask for help. So we even see right now that even in the divine union, the ability to articulate upon one's needs is really important. But even in the state or space of being able to say one needs easement, one needs enjoyment, being able to feel like it's okay to say that you can need a break, you need a point of rest, you just want some time for oneself. These are things that are almost required right now to be unpacked, because it's almost that energetic feeling right now of both energies trying to come into balance without feeling like they're inadvertently burdening the other one in the process. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Four of Wands in combination with our Queen of Pentacles in its reversal. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Four of Cups in its reversal. One of the advantages that we're effectively seeing right now for feminine energy specifically, this is a moment that is amplifying a level or degree of choice. What we're effectively seeing right now, specifically for the feminine energy in the divine union frequency right now, is this point of acknowledgement in terms of how one is going forward right now. This is feminine energy that is trying to find a way to become more efficient. This is feminine energy that is trying to find a way to amplify the positive right now without moving into this is feminine energy that's basically going through a point of overwhelm, if you will, to a certain degree right now. And this sense of overwhelm is actually productive. And how is this becoming a point of productivity? It's becoming a point of productivity effectively due to the feminine energy looking for new efficiencies, looking for new ways of doing things, breaking free from their own status quo of the self, because this is really feeling to a certain extent almost like a feminine energy that is going through, I want to describe this most as like a, what's the word I'm looking for? This is almost like this process of coming out of like a cocoon to a certain extent. This is feminine energy that is feeling this amplification point in effectively needing to find new ways of doing things because they've outgrown what was effectively creating that sense of stability for the past self. The problem with a lot of the feminine energy, if you're going through this right now, feminine, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, is remembering and recalling that that feeling of discomfort isn't necessarily working against you. It's working in your favor. It's showing you things that can be changed. It's showing you things that can evolve, that'll bring you into a sense of better balance. So even now we see that feminine energy isn't necessarily moving very reactively. This is feminine energy that's almost coming into a point of planning, There's moving with a lot of care, with a lot of caution, with a lot of consideration to amplify the positive and feeling to a certain extent. This is feeling like a bit like shedding of skin. This is feeling like a moment right now of recognizing what no longer serves you to figure out new opportunities of growth that are going to lead to more productive solutions in the future. So this is a lot of that, like chrysalis is the word I'm looking for. It's a lot of that chrysalis feeling that we're seeing that feminine is going through right now, because this is almost like necessarily requiring you to a certain extent to identify the points of discomfort to see how you can find points of better easement. Masculine, if in divine union with feminine right now, this ability of seeing feminine navigate in this way is in a way effectively helping you as well. Because what we're effectively identifying right now, this is, again, I have to say to a certain extent, this is masculine taking a lot of energetic notes from the feminine. This is masculine that almost appreciates and aspires for the fact that when you move into divine union, the feminine becoming more comfortable with the masculine, the feminine opening up more. This is masculine seeing a more of that intimate life of the feminine and building, and in a way, like we see here, that ability of recognition is further building that connectivity point with feminine, because it's almost watching how the feminine moves through these processes, watching how the feminine energy is evolving on their own self, becoming that better version of self. This is not masculine effectively feeling like they're standing on the sidelines. This is masculine almost feeling like they are participating in the same process, because this is a masculine that is also to a certain degree learning at the same time, learning the same lessons of vulnerability, learning the same lessons of creativity, building this sense of understanding and ideas that are coming through in this to a certain degree, because this is masculine energy that is being very, very observant of the feminine, because they're recognizing that connection point with the feminine exists within them as well. These are energies that are connected. And so seeing that process, experiencing that doesn't necessarily feel, and again, for masculine, it feels in a way like, again, you're kind of going with the feminine on this journey and feeling like you are being included in that process. Masculine and feminine coming into the divine union frequency. This is exactly why we see masculine and feminine coming into the divine union frequency. This is exactly why we see there may be some energy right now that is effectively falling into separation over circumstances and situations of this nature, specifically due to the fact that we are identifying here that this is feminine energy. Situations and circumstances right now for a lot of the energy isn't necessarily ideal. There may be a lot of setbacks and hurdles right now. What's happening for the energy in the divine union frequency? What setbacks? What hurdles? What impossibility vector? This is feminine energy potentially even articulating to masculine what that impossibility vector is. And what we're effectively seeing is for the feminine energy that's moving into divine union, this is masculine being like, what are you talking about? That's not a hurdle. There's nothing here I see as a hurdle. And even now for that feminine energy, coming into divine union and seeing masculine energy, that the feminine may be amplifying something that the feminine is saying, I'm sure that this is going to be a hurdle. I'm sure that this is going to be a problem. Seeing a masculine energy that's looking at that and saying, I don't see a hurdle. I don't see a problem there. That in itself is almost emotionally triggering to some of the feminine energy, because it is amplifying situations and circumstances in the past that made the feminine feel like something that the feminine is articulating was an impossibility vector that prevented some type of union from coming into play. This is feminine, again, feeling the weight and the robustness of a masculine energy, showing consistency even at a time of difficulty, that is amplifying to the feminine that this is an energy that it shows a level or degree of consistency, because it's not just masculine coming towards feminine at their own personal desire moment. This is masculine energy that's always trying to come back to the feminine, that's always like says the feminine energy is like effectively their home. They're trying to come back to the home. They're trying to come back to the feminine because this is masculine saying like, you know, why if there's traffic trying to get back to my house, I don't not go back to my house. I just go around the traffic. So this is almost like what we're seeing that the feminine is identifying right now. That's almost like feeling like that light bulb for a lot of the energy that's coming into the divine union frequency, because it's amplifying how important and significant it is to find energy that is in alignment in terms of what you're aspiring to build towards. Masculine energy coming into divine union with feminine at this time, what we're effectively identifying and recognizing is, again, a moment or opportunity wherein we see that the feminine energy is here. And this is the feminine energy that may be feeling like, to a certain extent, that they're saying, well, I'm sure that this is a bridge too far. I'm sure that this is too much. There's a moment here that I'm sure that this is too much for you to come through. And this is masculine energy. You may be looking at this feminine, if you're coming into divine union, and saying, no, it's not. In fact, like it's almost having to feel like, in a way, having to convince the feminine energy out of something that the feminine energy is feeling that doubt or uncertainty to a certain extent, is in a way what the masculine is in a moment right now trying to show to the feminine, because this is a masculine that's almost seeing, again, if building this pathwork with feminine, this is almost seeing the fact that there are energetic frequencies that may have led the feminine energy to feel like these were too many things to ask for. This point of stability that you're potentially trying to build with the feminine was too much. And your own ability right now in amplifying to the feminine and saying, what I'm trying to create with you, it's never going to be too much, because you are my future. You are my space. This is never going to be too much, because I'm always going to choose to come back to this. That in itself is the amplification of the energy coming into divine union that is being reinforced by difficult situations. It's almost like, again, stepping over them, as opposed to feminine energy that may be experiencing a moment or opportunity of a masculine that feels like anything that is energetically giving a reason is getting amplified. This is potentially feminine energy that's falling into separation right now around energy of masculine that may have often potentially used the slightest excuse or inconvenience to fall out of separation. This is feminine energy that's, again, almost coming into a release process, because this is feminine energy that's almost feeling like, again, potentially the vector of masculine that's only trying to come towards them from a passion center, instead of truly aspiring to build forward with the feminine or seeing the feminine as that home. That's why we see right now, for a lot of the feminine energy right now in separation, this feels like a deep release process, because this is potentially a feminine energy that's feeling the full breadth of weight of having to feel like they're over giving in a supportive environment to something. And this is potentially a feminine energy, if in separation, that is almost looking, this is almost a feminine energy that even in separation right now is trying to figure out what else they might be able to do, what else they might be able to put into something to try to create that point of stabilization. But this is why we see that for a lot of the feminine energy in separation right now, this almost feels like a release process, because this is feminine energy seeing and feeling the full weight of saying, I've done everything I can do. There's nothing else I can do. This is feminine almost waiting for masculine to take part in that experience, building towards the feminine, recognizing that there's only so much the feminine can do. And that's why we see now that even if there's a masculine energy from the past that's trying to come towards feminine from just the direction of their own passion, this is feminine energy that's almost pushing, saying to them, you're not finding the right door here. Because this is feminine energy saying your passion without consistency only creates instability. And for feminine energy articulating that to masculine, this is feminine energy saying, it's not that I don't want to have that passionate connection with you. It's just that it can't always be in that modality. There needs to be that consistency. There needs to be that sense that we're building together, as opposed to me just being a place that you can come and go as you please. Masculine energy, if in separation right now, this is also a moment where you may have been trying to build forth the feminine this way. You may have tried to be open in this capacity. You may have tried to say to the feminine, this is what I aspire to. But what you're coming into the process of recognizing to a certain extent is almost this like moment or opportunity wherein you're feeling that there's something about that truth that you were trying to build towards with the feminine, that it didn't necessarily lead to a feminine coming into a point of acceptance so much as it came into the point of a feminine coming into a point of rejecting it. And this is why we see that this is a masculine energy that's also going through a point of healing, because this is a masculine energy that's feeling to a certain extent that the only way to possibly build forth with a feminine would be to aspire to desire to have to abandon that long-term plan or path work that you're trying to do. And this is why we see even now there's that sense of potentially trying to move forward, but with the aspiration and hope that the feminine may come into alignment and meet you as you continue forward on that journey. Masculine energy in divine union right now, seeing the feminine energy in this modality right now and helping them cultivate these choices, it feels a little bit frustrating because we see the fact that the masculine, it's more like not being able to like come in and do something here, but wanting to, even now feels like a point of frustration for some of the masculine energy. So I'll put there right now too, because there could be a lot of masculine trying to help feminine with this work right now. But even now, it's like the difference between how the feminine's doing something right now versus the masculine that may feel like a little bit of a struggle point. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Queen of Pentacles in its reversal in combination with our Five of Pentacles in its upright. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Ten of Cups. Masculine and feminine energy in the divine union frequency. This moment or opportunity that we're seeing right now, this is one that is difficult, and especially right now for the feminine is what we're seeing, because there's a lot of anxiety potentially rising up right now in relation to feminine feeling that sense of stability. Now, I need to express this because for some of the feminine energy going through this right now, something may feel a little counter oppositional, because there could be a moment that being in the union of comfort, finding the security of the stabilizing point, it's not necessarily creating like all peace within you. It is amplifying the states or spaces that you're still experiencing some of these abandonment wounds on. This is that moment that, again, one thing sheds light on the other. So there's something about the experience of the presence in the divine union frequency that is almost creating a sense of lack within the feminine energy, because this is feminine energy that is almost feeling an internal sense right now of unpacking in their own worthiness and being able to maintain that frequency. This is some of those abandonment wounds that we saw that may have taken place in the past, unpacking a lot of that. Remember how I told you a few days ago that a lot of this wound that the feminine's been carrying was something about feminine taking the personal responsibility from it. Whereas the masculine right now in the divine union frequency is trying to show the feminine that isn't yours to carry. That isn't necessarily yours to carry. That is something someone else put there within you. And understanding and addressing that right now, it doesn't instantly heal the feminine. It doesn't heal the feminine of the wound. It recontextualizes the wound. And it's hard because that's almost feminine energy looking at the past self and seeing a blind spot that the feminine couldn't recognize in the past self that is creating a sense of doubt in the present self. So even now we see that feminine energy having that like harsh mirror on themselves to a certain degree right now. This may be feminine being very hard on themselves right now and feeling like they're adopting some energy right now that may very much like want to feed into some of those niggling voices of doubt or doubting of the self, those small voices that tell you that you can't trust one's own self, all of that work or that fear that you have to like unpack to a certain degree. A lot of this like work that we're seeing here to a certain extent is something that the feminine is trying to navigate right now due to the sense of security that is happening right now in the energetic connection. right? It's that feeling of the unsettled that comes up in a moment that should feel peaceful. That in itself is what feminine is wrestling with. Masculine, you may be seeing this right now on the part of a feminine. The feminine in that moment of instability or having to navigate through the feminine energy's own doubts and fears is something that we see that the masculine is trying to work through right now with feminine by offering and providing abundant reassurance. And this is almost why this is masculine energy. That's, again, in a way, like I want to say it's like standing on the sidelines to a certain extent, not wanting to come in and help the feminine with this, because this is not necessarily work that the masculine feels that they can help them with. This is something that is internal within the feminine to unpack within the self. But this is masculine that's trying to almost amplify to the feminine and say, whatever you're dealing with right now, I want you to know that sense, like, I am not abandoning you. I am not going anywhere. I know that you have these wounds. I know I can see them. I can see where these wounds came from. In fact, this is masculine almost experiencing and becoming overprotective of the feminine due to the observation of all of those spaces or places wherein the masculine sees the wrongs that may have occurred around the feminine that caused them to be in this mentality. This is masculine that's trying to come through by means of reassurance, but at the same time, not trying to devolve or devoid feminine of that experience, holding space by experiencing and feeling that vulnerability in kind. This is how we see that energetic connection is continuing to amplify right now. Masculine and feminine coming into the divine union frequency. This is why if feminine is feeling that consistency right now, seeing something that becomes consistent around something that may not necessarily may have created an abandonment wound in the past, it's going to feel triggering. It's going to feel triggering to a feminine, even at a moment that something positive is happening, because it is that moment where, again, something that the feminine was told or experienced was a deal breaker in the past. Something that the feminine was told was like, the exact reason why the feminine was allowed to be abandoned, or something was broken off or given as cited as the cause point. This is that moment that immediately it doesn't fix the situation, it changes it, because this is feminine energy that suddenly has to look back on that experience of abandonment with the new context of something or someone that doesn't even consider it a hurdle in the first place. Something that the feminine may have begged for that someone just gives immediately without a second thought. That moment or opportunity, it doesn't heal the situation. It doesn't validate the feminine. It doesn't make it go away. It creates, again, it amplifies the circumstance or situation that made the feminine feel like they were pushing too hard or asking for too much, in simply asking for something that someone doesn't even give a second thought for, because they say effectively that the connection requires that. So even now, being able to come into that divine union energy, that union frequency, it can be painful, because it reminds and it brings the feminine to all those points that instability wasn't present. Masculine, coming into divine union right now, this amplification point, this feeling right now of potentially wanting to move towards a feminine, you could even be feeling right now that feminine is kind of like moving in a place or space of hesitancy, of uncertainty. But for the masculine experiencing this right now, if this is that moment, you may be, again, you are feeling the full amplification of seeing a feminine at a time that you're giving them something that you haven't even thought twice about, and saying, like, what are you worried about here? What is causing this anxiety? And if this is a feminine that's articulating to you the spaces or places that this wound may have come from, this is almost, again, triggering you in the same modality, because this is now, again, looking energetically at someone that you're considering home, that you're now feeling that weight of the wound on. It's like someone came into your house and broke a window. They came in and they damaged something. And this is that moment of masculine almost trying to assure the feminine and saying, not on my watch. That's not something that will ever happen here. And even now, that sense of security is being amplified by masculine also being open and experiencing that point of vulnerability, because this is a shared moment of vulnerability. Masculine and feminine in separation right now, this is why this separation right now feels so painful, and fundamental, because this is feminine energy that is feeling that weight of, again, holding on to something. This could be a feminine that's feeling the grief of like having to hold like the full weight of something in order for it to be existing. This is why we see that so much of this feminine energy right now is moving into separation with the wait and see mentality, because if this is feminine energy that feels like they've been holding the roof up on a partnership, this is almost that moment of feminine stepping back to a certain degree to see what is there if the feminine energy doesn't put that full weight and degree of effort in at every single moment. Because we see that for a lot of the energy of feminine right now, it's not the fact that there's a connectivity point here. It's feminine energy reaching a level of practical exhaustion in relation to what something they need to put into versus what they're getting back. This is a feminine energy that may be effectively going through a point right now that feels like they're like at their breaking point energetically, because this is the moment of feminine feeling like they have to put everything into something in order not to feel abandoned. Like it's requiring them to put all the effort in and very little reward. And that's why we see now that even that moment is feminine basically almost stepping back and saying, I'm letting something go here, because this is feminine energy trying to say, I'm putting my cards on the table in terms of telling the masculine, saying, this is how I feel. This is feminine basically saying, I'm giving you a need. I'm telling you a need. I'm being vulnerable with you. Are you going to be willing to try to help me in this need? Or are you going to move in the different direction? Are you going to trigger an abandonment wound from me asking for you to come forward with this help? Are you willing to be able to meet me in kind? This is feminine basically, again, like releasing someone, but almost begging them not to go as they release. Because this is feminine saying, I need you to show up in the same way that I show up. Masculine, this is again, if this is masculine in separation, this is why these energies are so primed to find one another, because this is masculine energy that may be saying to feminine, I've given you everything. I've shown you everything that I can. You potentially even asked me to be open with you in this way. This is me not wanting to create an illusory space around you. This is me trying to build that openness. My openness caused a rejection. My openness caused you to walk away. So this is masculine almost saying to feminine again, I can't close this back up. I've opened up in this way. I can't go back into a life of falsehood with you. I can't go back into a place of like, if you asked me for this openness and then I provided it, now you've pushed me away. There's no way I can close the lid back on my own emotional self. So this is masculine, again, trying to come into easement if in separation, feeling the full breadth of understanding of the self, but feeling the sadness or weight of a feminine that at a moment that the masculine felt like they were finally coming into their full openness, that it came at this tremendous cost of losing a feminine in the process that wasn't necessarily ready to accept them in that modality. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Five of Pentacles in combination with our Ace of Wands in its reversal. Clarification coming through right now with our Page of Wands. So, masculine and feminine energy right now. What are we seeing that's happening for the energy right now in the divine union frequency? The addressing of an abandonment wound does not lead to an abandonment wound. The addressing of the abandonment wound, the expression of the anxiety, the expression of the fear. Show me where it hurts so I can fix it. Show me where you're wounded so I can put a balm there. Show me where you need that support so that I can put the repairs there. The energy in the divine union frequency is coming into that expression of need and desire, because it is that sense of recognizing the immediate facilitation of healing. And this is the funny part. This is the funny part about what's happening right now for the energy in the divine union. The recognition that someone will be there in a moment to lend that level or degree of assistance is what is creating a sense of trepidation right now as it relates to how to give forth in this way, because this is feminine that is effectively identifying and feeling the support of the masculine, but also recognizing of not wanting to overburden a masculine energy, bearing in mind this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, that will be there in a heartbeat. So what do you do with energy that you know is there in a heartbeat? You don't want to overburden them, because if you feel that anxiety of expressing something, you know that they're going to come in to support it. And it's almost that moment of feminine being like, I'm going to hold on to this for a moment so that I don't necessarily have to overburden the energy that I care about with my own needs and desires. This is why we see right now for the feminine, some of this unpacking is one, that feminine's keeping a little bit of it internal and trying to do it themselves, because it's that sense of feeling the supportive energy of the masculine around them. It's almost that moment of saying, I'm not expressing, this is masculine that like wants to pick up a hammer, that wants to like get to work on something. And this is why feminine's like, I want to be hesitant about what I say, because I know that masculine's going to show up with like the, it's going to do that work. So this is feminine almost again, working through that to a certain capacity and facility. Masculine energy right now, this is you in that modality. This is you if in the divine union energy right now, that is looking in that space or place of wanting to come into repair. But we're also seeing here, and I think that this is the thing that's really important about this right now, is like, there's a lot of like seriousness that's coming into play right now. This is masculine, again, moving into a space or place of trying almost frenetically right now to like heal everything at once, right? Masculine, you've like got that energy right now, and you're feeling the weight of frustration. The frustrations themselves is almost creating a sense of masculine moving more into like a busybody type of energy here, right? This is masculine that's looking for anything that they can do to a certain extent to let out their frustrations in relation to what they would ideally be aspiring for right now. This is masculine that may be like running themselves a little bit ragged right now, because this is masculine that's almost trying to like navigate their own abandonment wound that almost calls forth to them to like put activity into spaces or places to be able to be helpful, to be able to create, like if there's a need there, not wanting to be lax on it. But even that is what we're effectively seeing right now, is creating a space of masculine navigating their own inner child wounds. So we see that both of these energies right now are moving into a space of trying to address an abandonment wound, but in a very, very supportive environment. So this is that moment that we're seeing that a lot of that energetic unpacking is happening right now in the divine union frequency. It's not that the abandonment wounds go away. It's all about what you do about them and how you facilitate and taking that negative and turning it into a positive. Masculine and feminine coming into the divine union frequency. This is why having this happen right now may be feeling like it's creating instability in the feminine. Because what do you do in a moment or opportunity where something that you expressing a need, potentially past places where you expressed a need and it immediately led to rejection, it immediately led to distancing? What occurs in that moment that you energetically meet someone where it's like you express the need and they're like, that's not a need. That's nothing. I'm not even thinking about it. This is almost an energy that like moves in that way without even giving it a second thought. And that is that moment that we're effectively identifying right now that is amplifying for some of the feminine energy, the feeling that prior to this, it may be feeling like a lot of the energy from the past felt like you were more in the role of a caretaker towards masculine, as opposed to being in an energy of someone who is trying to take care of you. And what we're effectively seeing right now for a lot of this feminine energy navigating this space or place right now, if coming into the divine union frequency, it is the recontextualization of past experiences, because you're looking more like at some of the energy from the past experiences, and you're not even holding it in offense to some of that energy. You're almost looking at it more like child energy, like energy that was looking for caretaker from feminine as opposed to collaborator. as opposed to being an energetic union. And this is why we even see now, if this is feminine energy that feels a lot of masculine energy that's coming towards them from a state of their own need and desire, if this is feminine energy in separation, this is feminine energy pushing masculine away to a certain extent, because it almost feels like a masculine that only comes towards feminine when they need or desire something, instead of being cognizant or caring about what the feminine needs. This is feminine right now moving into a modality of identifying the difference energetically of an energy that does not want to see the feminine in a point of need versus the energy that only comes to feminine when they are in need. So we see here that ability, that emotional connection point, that ability to build with the feminine in this capacity right now, even if coming into divine union, it may feel triggering because it's unlocking experiences or opening up experiences in the past where you may have felt like your connection with masculine was more in the role of having to be in a place of being their caretaker, as opposed to being there in partnership, in union. Masculine, if you are coming into divine union with the feminine, and this is a feminine that's showing a hesitancy in terms of asking you for things, and this is you kind of feeling like you need to like rattle them out or shake them out to find out what they need, and then you find out what they need and it's so small that you're like, that's, of course, I wouldn't even think twice about that. This is also a moment that when feminine is articulating to you, like, why are you so worried about asking for these things? And this is feminine saying to masculine, well, when I've asked for these things in the past, the energy ran away. This is masculine looking at feminine and saying, you are dealing with a child. You were dealing with that was a child. Only a child would act that way. Only a child would move in a way that stating a need leaves them to flee instead of to come and lend support. And that is why we see that there's a lot of this masculine energy right now that is almost healing their own inner child by saying, I am not a child. I do not move in that way. If there is a difficulty, I come and I facilitate to fix that thing. I'm showing you to a certain extent that I am not a child, and potentially that you are dealing with energy that was childlike in the past connotation. Masculine and feminine that are in separation right now. This is why the feminine energy is potentially expressing right now that point of overwhelm, of feeling like, again, that Atlas energy of feeling like they're basically taking a move, like this is feminine energy in separation right now that's not even feeling, I need to stress, they don't even feel like they're doing anything to facilitate something closing. This is feminine energy just not putting in the effort. This is almost feminine energy saying, I wonder what would happen if I just came into a point of easement here. If I didn't feel like I had to hold up these walls, would this whole thing come crashing down? This is literally feminine energy just taking a step back and like energetically to a certain extent on some situations and scenarios saying, I'm going to see what would happen if I just take a breather. I'm going to see what happens if I just move away from something. Is that going to lead the energy to come towards me to find out what I need? Is it going to bring them closer? Or is this going to just facilitate them just staying gone because it's almost amplifying the amount and level of work that is required for a feminine to be able to build a connection point in terms of identifying whether something feels like there's a harmony happening here, or if this is feminine just singing to themselves, right? This is feminine just like stopping the song for a minute to see if they can hear the other person singing, or if this is feminine that's just been kind of singing this song to themselves and the other person's just been kind of like mouthing the words, but not necessarily partaking. Like this is feminine being like, what would happen if I just stopped singing for a minute to see if the other energy is still doing their part in that harmonic connection. So we see here that this is feminine energy in separation in a way, almost saying to themselves, I'm not even walking away from something. I'm just going to stop trying to see if that energy is going to be able to match it back, or if this is just going to evaporate and disappear. So we see, and for masculine right now in separation, this is that moment that we're effectively seeing that, again, you may also be doing that same level or effort of energy right now. If this is a masculine that's been trying to come towards feminine with a level or degree of truth and has been trying to put that effort and energy into something, this is masculine that a certain way is also looking towards feminine and saying, I've tried to give you everything that you've asked for. I've even given you that truth that made me feel like I was going to trigger an abandonment wound. Is this something that's still there, or are you leaving me at a moment that I'm giving you the things that you're asking for? So energetically, as we saw, these energies in separation, they're both effectively primed to new connections, articulating on the fact that this is what has effectively led them to this point. Both energies experiencing the abandonment wound and then suddenly having that snap in terms of a connection point saying, I know exactly how you feel. I know exactly what you mean. I've been there. It's not exact, but I've been on the same journey. Continuing to get clarification on these cards right now between our Four of Cups in its reversal and our Nine of Cups in its upright. May I please have one card to clarify? Clarification coming through right now with our Fool card in its reversal. This is the beauty of the divine union frequency. So energetically right now, this moment or opportunity that is helping or help and like it's to a certain degree, it's almost like the divine union frequency is coming down across all of the energy, even the energy in separation right now. Because what we're effectively seeing is that amplification point between what feels like is energetically aligning versus what is requiring a new course of action or a new direction. And there's an energy here that we're seeing that is almost requiring an openness, showing one's full breath, not wanting to move in a space of like conjecture or illusion, just trying to be as open and honest as possible. The dropping of artifice to a certain extent that is allowing for a point and level or degree of clarity. Now, energetically in the divine union frequency, this moment of vulnerability, this openness is something that you're moving more, you're getting better and better and better at it, because what you're identifying and experiencing in the divine union frequency is the more open you are, the more you can facilitate positive solutions, the more you can make sure that you're on the same page, the more you can move, again, in harmony and utilize the experiences of each other to help motivate you as you go. This is that moment of basically effectively going to the other person and saying, I'm out of ideas. Well, what happens energetically when you're open with someone and you give them the full breadth of something and say, I don't know what else to do. I'm fresh out of ideas on how to do this. Well, that's the moment someone has the opportunity and step in and say, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Because that's that moment, that point that we feel like this is the passing of the energetic baton, if you will, in terms of saying, well, I'm out of ideas. Well, here we go. Here's that energetic alignment to give you that point and say, well, I know what to do with this. I know exactly where to take this. I know exactly who to take this with. I know exactly what to do with this. I know exactly where to go with this. That ability to work with one another, to help each other, even if it's just in the moment of encouragement and solutions and problem solving. That is that moment of taking that feeling of uncertainty and finding that that uncertainty, just expressing the need, allows for a abundance of new possibilities and opportunities to open up. Masculine and feminine in the divine union, you're experiencing this, and this is something that feels like a continual effort. Now is like even more so because we see that there are some like immediate tangible hurdles that are being addressed in terms of finding new efficiencies. Masculine and feminine coming into the divine union frequency. This is that modality or that moment that we're effectively seeing that is amplifying energy that is moving very quickly into the frequency. Because this moment that like someone is potentially articulating a need here, this ability of saying, I'm fresh out of ideas, opening up to each other, telling each other the difficult thing instead of just what one needs to hear, And instead of that leading to someone like moving in the other direction or saying something like, well, that sounds like a you problem, or I guess let me know how that goes, or I hope things improve. Having that energy and saying, well, here's some thoughts, here's what I would do, here's how I can help. That ability and amplification right now in recognizing that is allowing a bit of a breakthrough here of energy that's moving very quickly into divine union, because that's that moment of realizing when you've taken something as far as you can, the energy of the divine union isn't going to abandon you. That's when they're going to offer you a robustness of possibilities, even if it's in the realm of saying, I'm here with you. This isn't something you're doing alone. This is something that we're experiencing together. And that affirmation of moving together on the journey might be just all you need to feel that sense of encouragement, even as we see this requires a point of processing, specifically for feminine to a certain extent, because again, this is feminine almost amplifying to a certain degree that this isn't something that feminine is asking masculine to step in and help with. Beyond the realm of ideas, this is almost feminine saying, I want to do this myself. I just need to know that, like, in a way they're saying your support, knowing that you have my back here is enough. Simultaneously for masculine right now, this could be a feeling of helping feminine through that to a certain degree, while also recognizing that watching how feminine progresses, watching how feminine moves in a way is almost giving masculine energy reward enough, because even that sense of how feminine energy navigates moments of internal instability and processing them is where masculine is getting a better understanding of self right now. These energies are healing each other on different frequencies. Masculine and feminine coming into divine union, that breakthrough moment, it's hard because it's reminding you of all the places in the past where expressing that need did not lead to that kind of connection point, where potentially you may have felt like expressing that need led to like abandonment instead of like the lights coming on in the room. Masculine and feminine in separation right now, this ability to step back, to lay one's cards on the table and say, I'm fresh out of ideas, is the opportunity that someone is effectively giving to another person to say, I don't know what else to do here. I need you to step in. I need you to harmonize. There's something about someone energetically saying, I have run out of options in terms of how to fix something. And this is the energy that we see right now that is almost, again, masculine and feminine in separation, saying, I've done everything that I can here. Show me that you have some kind of desire or need to meet me here. Because this is the energy that says, the only thing I'm not willing to do right now is chase after you, if everything I do is going to lead to rejection. This is almost the energy just coming into a space of saying, I refuse to chase. I refuse to chase after something that is giving every indication that it does not desire to be here. Because again, the energetic equivalent that desires this is someone that would meet me at this point to lend assistance, as opposed to amplifying that sense of quietude or solitude at a moment that is almost the moment that someone most deeply needs that point of connectivity. So we see a lot of new potential journeys opening up right now, even at this moment, potentially overlapping in terms of new energetic connections happening and expressing and feeling that one has done everything that one can do in a situation or circumstance, and feeling a lot of alignment in terms of new energy you're finding that says, I know exactly what you're talking about. I've experienced very much the same. Connections continuing between our Nine of Cups and our Page of Wands. Clarification coming through right now with, again, Two of Wands in its reversal. This is that moment that we're effectively seeing right now. And it's difficult because we see, what are we seeing here for a lot of the energy in separation right now? This is feeling like, again, pushing communication as far as one can, and then having new communication that's starting up around you at the same time. This is that feeling of, again, almost like washing hands to a certain extent, feeling like one has done all that one can do, doing everything that one can do, even as those new connection points are effectively happening, because that ability right now in identifying something that feels like, you have to kind of keep the lights on in a place or space energetically versus something that feels like it's more in harmony in terms of like that back and forth, that give and take. Like that ability right now of identification is leading to new connection points of energy that feels more invested in offering possibilities and solutions. We even see here in separation right now, this is energy talking about the lack of communication, talking about that limitation point, talking about that feeling of having done everything one can do, almost seeking to see if there's any insight in ways or spaces to be able to create a point of improvement. This is leading potentially to new energetic connections that are taking forth because both energies are moving to each other from a state of complete openness. And that openness is being amplified here. Masculine and feminine right now, this ability to see this right now, coming into divine union, putting all of your cards on the table. For some of the energy right now, again, masculine just being completely open and honest. And this is almost that moment of, again, even being open and honest about what you're moving away from here that may feel like you may have desired to move forward on it, but you're not seeing that possibility there. Even now, we are experiencing a moment that you're experiencing new energetic connections that you may feel like there's that connectivity point on. And even now for the energy coming into divine union, this could be a point of feeling that sense of wanting to bring forth to someone and helping them recognize the limitations of the energy that may have made that feel like such a burden in the first place. Feminine, I got to stress, if there's a moment right now that you're being open and honest in this way and it's leading to a masculine energy, bearing in mind that this is not based on gender, but what it feels most aligned to, that you're just expressing these things, the masculine saying, that's not a problem. This is feminine almost leading up with the masculine saying, I'm putting it all on the table. I'm giving you all the facts. I'm showing you all the things about this that might be problematic. And if this is masculine going, those all sound like wins to me. Everything you said sounds awesome. Everything you said sounds amazing. Where's the negative? This is feminine almost feeling like, again, this like cracking moment in terms of recognizing that like what someone was like berating them for that made it so difficult, someone doesn't even see. It's not even registering as a blip on their own map because it's, again, the energy is almost just seeing it from the positives because there's energetic alignment. When you're energetically aligned, even the negatives don't seem that negative. They just seem like positives. Continuing, masculine and feminine in the divine union frequency, this is all about finding points of easement, finding better connectivity. This is overcoming those frustrations and hurdles right now and giving each other support along the way. So a lot of communication hurdles right now being discussed or how to facilitate better communication going forward. Final card for today's spread between our Fool card in its reversal and our Two of Wands in its reversal. A lot of breakthroughs today. Clarification coming through right now with King of Cups in its reversal. Now, I'm not surprised to see this card because we started today with our Strength in its reversal. I told you a lot of the issues about today have to do with the feeling of vulnerability. I need to stress that even for the masculine energy right now, in the divine union frequency, there may be some feelings right now of emotional overwhelm that are occurring. This emotional overwhelm may be coming through a sense of frustration. A frustration in the realms of planning and communication. This could be plans that are getting kind of mucked up or made awry. This is potentially hurdles in terms of communication. But again, one of the positives that's potentially happening around these circumstances or situations right now is even encountering this. Masculine, allowing this moment of emotional overwhelm right now, is also expressing an ability to recognize that in the divine union frequency, you are also allowed to come into a point of easement. You are also allowed to come into a point of emotional overwhelm. There is space and place, and this is why we see right now What are we identifying that is potentially happening right now for some of the masculine energy? There is this masculine energy that's working through an abandonment wound that feels to a certain extent like if they are not useful, if they're not always in the problem solving capacity, then they may eventually ultimately be abandoned. And this is again almost masculine energy coming into this emotional overwhelm space in divine union to show them that they don't necessarily need to be working on fixing things all the time. It's okay for the masculine to have that point of easement. It's okay for masculine to come into that point of emotional vulnerability, that emotional vulnerability isn't going to lead to abandonment. That is how the abandonment wound is effectively being navigated right now with the masculine energy in divine union, because there's something about the masculine feeling this need or desire to be strong all the time that is almost causing the masculine not necessarily to express the full breadth of their emotionality. And it may be hard for masculine right now in divine union to even put this into words. But a lot of this is coming from the care of the feminine, the majority of that care, the fact of feeling like, again, the feminine energy is their home. And that sense of wanting to take care of that home space, that internal home space, is almost feeling somewhat emotionally overwhelming for the masculine. Feminine energy right now in this modality, seeing the masculine in this modality is almost amplifying to a masculine that the feminine isn't necessarily going to judge the masculine for not being able to come forward always from a state of finding solutions to problems, that the masculine has space to be soft and vulnerable, that the work right now for masculine to be able to come into a point of emotional easement is also allowed and necessary. So this could be speaking right now for a feminine that understands and recognizes that masculine just needs some space right now to be able to emotionally decompress, while also recognizing that that doesn't necessarily mean that the masculine wants to talk about it. The problem around this right now is the fact that the feminine may not necessarily recognize that sometimes this ability, emotionally talking about it, may not necessarily feel like that's the way that masculine wants to express an emotional overwhelm. That this could be a moment that's recognizing that the way that feminine processes, which is potentially unpacking and talking, isn't necessarily the space or place of the way that masculine likes to process things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the masculine isn't going through emotionally difficult circumstances right now. It's almost about finding new ways in terms of recognizing what the masculine needs at a point of emotional overwhelm that might not necessarily be based on talking it out. Masculine and feminine right now, but this may be hard for a feminine because it may feel like, again, that there may be some feeling of emotional distance right now of a masculine that may be feeling overwhelmed, but this could be a moment, if this is feminine energy that likes to talk about things, it may be hard for the masculine to put this into words. So just be mindful of that today, feminine. Masculine and feminine coming into divine union right now. This is what we are seeing that is potentially creating a sense of emotional overwhelm in feminine. Because this is seeing how far a masculine energy will go when they're actually emotionally invested in the feminine. So for a lot of the feminine energy right now, this is feeling somewhat potentially overwhelming, because if these are circumstances and situations that are building a point of consistency here, feminine potentially seeing or addressing a hurdle that they thought was going to potentially create an impossibility matrix with the masculine, potentially feeling the anxiety of expressing something for fear that that would send the masculine in the opposite direction. But instead of it pushing the masculine away, it's like them immediately not even blinking and stepping forward. It's immediately requiring feminine to navigate spaces or places in terms of recontextualizing the experiences from the past, in seeing the masculine that wasn't necessarily able to handle those situations, and in a way utilize those circumstances as a reason to distance from the feminine. So we see here that even now this is feminine energy that's moving forward into divine union, but it's very triggering to do so because it's almost amplifying the spaces and places in the past where feminine reached that limitation point. Masculine, this could be seeing this on the part of a feminine right now and feeling the frustration and anxiety of some of the masculine energy that this feminine may have experienced prior to this, because this is potentially you moving into divine union and understanding and seeing that something that you're providing the feminine, someone else did not provide the feminine. And that could be a moment that feels very emotionally overwhelming, especially if you're in deep connection with this feminine energy and moving into divine union, because this is the moment that you're taking a lot of that personal slight from the feminine very, very personally. It almost feels like something that has hurt the feminine has hurt you, because you're moving into divine union. Masculine and feminine in separation right now, this is why we see for a lot of the feminine energy right now, this is a very painful moment, because this is a feeling of, again, it feels like a separation point from a masculine wherein you would aspire and desire to be in connectivity with them. But this is a feminine that's almost trying to recalibrate that connection point in terms of saying that there's something about this that is requiring feminine to put too much of the emotional, energetic lifting into something, and feeling like all that they're effectively getting back in kind is connectivity emotionally with a masculine. So this is feminine energy that's almost trying to amplify to a masculine right now that may even be getting reactive of the feminine pushing back in this way, that this point is not about a lack of care or a lack of love. It's desiring and aspiring to have that emotional openness energetically. And this is something that feminine is feeling that limitation point on, because this is feminine that's looking at masculine and saying that unless masculine has come into that point of self-work, that is willing to be vulnerable in this way, this isn't something that feminine can force out of a masculine. This may even be a moment that masculine tries to reactively push back on the feminine. And again, look at the experiences and situations as the culprit as to why there are these limitations instead of taking accountability. And this is why we see, to a certain extent, this is almost feminine energy that's not necessarily looking to fight with a masculine on this. They're just effectively looking to see if the masculine understands what needs to be brought to allow that type of energetic connection. And feminine's moving forward with the hope and aspiration that when masculine is ready and understands this, that the feminine will be there to receive it. Masculine, if in separation right now, this is a moment that if you tried to come towards feminine with your truth and it led to a point of rejection, that sense of recognizing that that isn't a moment that you want to abandon yourself in a point of truth, that again, coming into healing and recognizing that even now that sense of experiencing that wasn't necessarily your fault. It was leading you to coming into a space or place of an energy that would be able to fully express and embrace you for who you are. This is something that feels very difficult right now. And masculine, you may be going through a lot of emotional overwhelm as you experience this. But again, a lot of this is almost leading you to a lot of lessons going forward, because we did see that for some of this energy right now, this is not necessarily a moment that feels like the mistake was being open. It has to do with the fact that you may have felt like you didn't lead with this. You didn't come forward with this in the beginning. And that sense of feeling like you have to recover from something here is where we see there's allowing for some kind of pathwork here to a new possibility as you move forward from this point. Bottom of the deck on this reading for today is Page of Pentacles. Masculine and feminine energy. Everybody's in this modality right now where they don't necessarily want help. Do you see what's happening here? Especially for the energy in the divine union frequency, because there's this sense or this feeling that when you're careful and you're protective of something, you know that that energy is going to be there, but you also don't want to burden it. Like, that is the act of love, knowing that someone is there and available to offer that, but never wanting to ask for it to a certain extent. So we even see now in this modality, there's a little bit of this frustration, even in the divine union, because this is the energy that wants to help each other, but we're holding back, or you're holding back to a certain degree because you don't want to burden someone or inconvenience someone when you feel like they're in a moment of need. So energetically right now, being able to accept the help and the support of others may be a little bit of a tricky, sticky territory, especially for some of the energy in the divine union frequency. Masculine and feminine right now, receiving something that someone else made it feel was like an impossibility vector, was like a bridge too far, having someone just give it to you without blinking right now, that in itself is the triggering situation, because it's bringing to mind a lot of that healing pathwork where something that is now being given like without a second thought was not the case in some kind of other context, and it's creating this space of deeper healing that's coming to the forefront in the recognition of this occurring now. Masculine and feminine in separation, this inability to see what is ahead of you is the difficulty, because it's not necessarily that you're getting what you need here, but it's the difference between what is in the hand versus what needs to be released to be able to manifest what you try to desire right now. So even now there's a questioning of one's own self, because there's something here that we're seeing in separation that you're potentially letting go of, and you're saying, this isn't feel right for me. It doesn't feel like it's fair. It feels like it is energetically exhaustive. It's not giving back in the way that I would hope it reciprocates, but I don't want to let go of it for fear of it not coming back at all. So even now we see that that is a bit of that burden here, because even though it's meager, someone is almost like trying to assess and say, is it well enough to hold this meager thing in order to have it at all? That is where we find all of the energy today. Thank you so much. And that is our daily collective read for today. Thank you so much for being here and sharing in these messages today. Just a reminder, if you would like to book a private reading with me, you can book one on my website, graystrega.com. My private readings are done over video, and if you are a subscriber to my TikTok, you can take 10% off any of my services when you pay. Just mention your subscriber ID at the point of payment. Please keep in mind, if you book a private reading with me, it is a two-step process. You have to book a private reading. You have to pay for the reading. You have to book a reading. Please make sure you do both if you'd like to have that reading. Most importantly, please keep in mind that I will never, ever, 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 ever reach out to you for a private reading. I will never DM you. I will never PM you. I will never slide into your inbox and tell you that I have a very important message that only I can deliver. The only way you can book a reading with me is if you book one on my website. So I encourage you to do it there. I'd like to thank you guys so much for being here with me today and sharing with me in these messages. And we will do this again tomorrow.